Whole Hog Sports presents the basketball podcast of Mid-America, the premier Arkansas Hoops podcast, brought to you by Landers Toyota of Northwest Arkansas. With Whole Hog Sports basketball analyst Scotty Bordelon, here's your host, Matt Jones.
We said on last week's podcast that January would be a pivotal month for Razorback basketball because the games, for the most part, seemed winnable, a lot more winnable than they look in February. Arkansas didn't get off to a very good start to the month, losing to Vanderbilt 75-74 at Bud Walton Arena on Tuesday night. And now Arkansas has lost 4 of 5 overall. They're 10-4, 0-2 in SEC play for the first time since 2014. Matt Jones with Scotty Bordelon of Whole Hog Sports and Bob Holt of the Arkansas Democrat Gazette. Bob, you pay a lot of attention to the teams around the SEC. We think Vanderbilt's a better team this year than they have been. You know, they finally gotten off the mat. They're probably out of the SEC cellar this year, but that still seems like a pretty bad loss for the Razorbacks to fall to Vanderbilt, especially at home.
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt that Vanderbilt's a better team, but still, they're not Auburn or Kentucky or Alabama or, the top, Tennessee. And, if you look on paper, I think even going into that game, you'd say Vanderbilt at home is probably the most, winnable game in their SEC schedule. Maybe Missouri at home because Missouri hadn't been very good. Georgia almost beat A&M. So that doesn't look like that's going to be an easy game when they play Georgia. But, yeah, I mean, that's just if you're going to have a good season, it's hard to imagine a home loss to Vanderbilt. They got 16 games left, 16 SEC games left plus West Virginia, and that's a huge opportunity for them at home too. But it's just hard to feel a lot of optimism when you lose at home to Vanderbilt, especially when Vanderbilt made so many miscues late in the game to really it was like they were trying to give it back to Arkansas, and Arkansas just couldn't take advantage. So no doubt Jerry Stackhouse has done a good job adding pieces there. They're a better team. Scottie Pippen's one of the best players in the league, but still, that there's just no way around it. That's a really bad loss for Arkansas.
Something interesting. I was just looking at KenPom just to see, the progression that Vanderbilt's made year over year with Jerry Stackhouse. And Vanderbilt right now is number 68 on KenPom. Kansas State, who Arkansas beat in Kansas City, is number 69. So I think, Vanderbilt's not as bad as maybe a lot of people think. Maybe they're just looking at their track record's not great, right? Like they haven't been a good basketball program in a long time. Still, that's not in any way, shape, or form excusing or me forgiving the loss from Arkansas on Tuesday, but just bad basketball. Just kind of like turnover. It's kind of been the same stuff with like all of Arkansas's losses. Like they either give up a bunch of threes, turn the ball over, it can't get consecutive stops, and then it's just kind of inconsistent performances. Like you may have a few guys go for decent scoring games, but maybe another guy that you're used to kind of counting on falls off, or maybe a guy gets in double figures, but like JD Note, he goes like 6 of 17 from the floor, misses 6 of 7 threes. And then Devo he's absolutely was a complete non-factor. Third game this year, he has not scored or taken a shot, which I don't know. I think that's one of the things that Arkansas needs to really get going is him. I think they're really missing his production on offense. He can be one of their better players when he's engaged, and defensively too. Just wasn't good. Vanderbilt was 3 of 3 from the floor when Devo was the nearest defender. So just lots of things. I feel like every podcast I come on here and just rattle on about the things that just aren't going well, but none of them really seem to be getting fixed, which is a real concern.
We've got plenty to nitpick about the basketball team, but let's start with the positive first. I saw the other day that it was the 54-year anniversary of the release of The Good, the Bad, and the Ugly, the great Sergio Leone film. And so let's do good, bad, and the ugly today. Let's start with the good for Arkansas from the Vanderbilt game. I think, Scotty, it has to begin with the fact that Stanley Amude looked like the type of scorer they expected him to be when they recruited him out of South Dakota last season. He finishes with 28 points. Adesi Tony had a really nice game, probably the best game that he's had in a month or more, finished with 22 points. Let's start there. What you thought about their play and the other things that stood out to you positively from the Vanderbilt game.
Yeah, Stanley, I think the last couple games is looking more like the guy that Eric Musselman envisioned he was getting from South Dakota, like a guy that could just is pretty dynamic scorer, and he can be efficient. No, he was a volume shooter and scorer at South Dakota, and the last couple games he's just been kind of letting it fly, shooting with some confidence, and he's seen some shots fall. He made 7 of his last 8 shots at Mississippi State, and then he made 8 of his first 9 against Vanderbilt. And I mean, you can't really play offensive basketball much better than that. And it's a good thing that he was playing as well as he was, or they would have been down double figures at halftime to Vanderbilt instead of leading by 5. I think he had 18 in the first half, but he's been looking really good. He's getting to his sweet spots. He's been really good on the left wing from 3. I think he was 5 of 10 going into the Vanderbilt game. And then I think he was like 6 of 8 on the left baseline. That left baseline is a spot that he has just lived and had a lot of success in the past. So he's getting to his spots. He's getting really good looks. And I think teammates are starting to look for him now that more now that he's knocking down some jumpers. So that was really encouraging. I think, as long as he can continue making strides defensively, he's going to be a really terrific player.
Yeah, I think obviously Stanley played really well. It was good for Arkansas to see Tony reappear, I guess you could say, because he played great in Kansas City, was the MVP of the Hall of Fame Classic, and last night was probably the best he's played since then. His scoring had fallen off. He just didn't seem to be as aggressive. Of course, he didn't play a whole lot at Mississippi State, but I think he had like 1 rebound or something in 17 minutes, something like that. So it was good for Arkansas to see him get more involved. And those two guys can be big pieces moving forward. But it's tough for Arkansas that, you got 2 guys combined for, I think Tony had 20, maybe he had 22. They combined for 50 or 48, and then you still lose. That's just a tough deal for Arkansas.
I thought one other positive that Arkansas could take out of last night was the way that they were able to extend the game in the final 55 seconds or so. They're from about the 4 or 5 minute mark down to about a minute left in the game. It seemed like, Arkansas would get it within 2, 3, 4 points, and then Vanderbilt would hit a shot that would extend it back out to 5 or 6 points. And it just kept playing out like that. And, it'd be easy to give up at one point. I think Vanderbilt, with somewhere around a minute left, you guys know this better than I do, they hit a corner 3 that put them up by 6 points. And it felt like at that point the game was over. And Arkansas ended up having plenty of chances to either tie it or win it. I mean, Chris Lykes missed the free throw. They had a couple or 3-point looks in the final 11 to 15 seconds. I thought that there was some positivity to take away, that they were able to show a lot of fight there toward the end and give themselves multiple chances to win when maybe it looked like there wasn't a chance with about a minute left.
I guess that's a good news, bad news. The good news is they had a lot of chances. Bad news is they couldn't convert when they really needed to. But yeah, you have to give them credit for hanging in there. But like I say, Vanderbilt Vanderbilt did a lot of good things, hitting 10 of 25 threes and forcing Arkansas. And I don't know if they were forced. Some of those turnovers on Arkansas were just like they gave the ball away. But Vanderbilt really, past Arkansas teams would have taken advantage of those opportunities and won, I believe. That's a game Arkansas should have won. There's just no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
I guess where I'm going with that is that, they've lost 4 or 5 games, but there's still some fight in this team. You're not seeing them give up late in the game, Scotty.
Yeah, they're not giving up late in games, I guess you could say. But, we've talked about this on previous podcasts. Like, they're just not starting games fast, and they're not starting second halves fast. And last night, Arkansas, they tripled down on this with a bad start. Devo got blown by, like lightning quick blow by Scottie Pippen, added a layup. And then on Vanderbilt's next possession, I believe they gave up a wide open corner 3. Eric Musselman who doesn't ever call timeouts on his own, really. Um, Burns won like less than like a minute and 10 seconds into the game. To end the first half, Arkansas's up, I think I think they took a lead like 8 or 9 points at one
40 to
point. And
31.
then
Yeah.
yeah, and then Vanderbilt started chipping away a little bit. And then Audis Tony couldn't control a rebound with like just a few seconds left in the first half. And then Arkansas gives up the sideline out of bounds lob layup to Pippen. And that's just the kind of thing that just can't happen. I saw when there was .9 left on the clock before Vandy called a timeout, I saw Connor Vanover get up, take his shooting top off. And I'm just like, Eric's going to station him under the rim and just tell him to be a goalie. But they put him on the inbound passer, and there was nobody around the rim, just nobody. Like, I know .9 seconds is plenty of time for somebody to get off a shot on the perimeter. I'm just not sure that it's enough time to get off a good look. And I feel like you can, as long as you're between your man and the basket, you can kind of force him, a little bit farther out on the perimeter. I wasn't crazy about how they defended that last .9 seconds. And then Vanderbilt took a lead like a few minutes into the second half on a 6-0 run by one of Vanderbilt's guys. I think Jordan Wright, I think he hit a layup and added 4 free throws. And all of a sudden, Arkansas is losing in a game that, they feel like they probably should have been well ahead in.
I could say the bad from the game last night was the SEC Network's Sky Cam that they put on Scottie Pippen Sr. on the court side. But let's stick with the game here. I think you got to start with the bad is still this 3-point defense. And I thought it was interesting listening to Pat Bradley right after the game ended. He and Peter Burns were talking on SEC Network, and Burns asked him, what do you see going wrong with Arkansas? And what Pat said was basically, you're just seeing too many teams dribble drive on the Razorbacks. He said that right now, that SEC logo in the paint, teams are getting there way too easily and being able to kick out for wide open looks. And I thought you saw more of that last night.
Yeah, the dribble drives have really been a problem. Eric referenced that when they got beat by Oklahoma, and Oklahoma had, I think, 13 of 22 threes. And Eric talked about their inability to stop penetration, and that's really been an issue. There have been games where, I guess the Mississippi State game, Mississippi State didn't shoot three very well. Arkansas still got beat by 13, I guess it was. Of course, didn't have Note. Yeah, I don't know how they fix that issue, because it's like Eric said, you can't teach lateral quickness. Maybe they just got to be mentally make a stronger commitment to defense. Maybe they, last night, I guess I thought it was kind of a matchup zone, but they had a deal where they were playing like 3 guys in the back, looked like they were playing zone, and maybe the 2 guys out front were doing matchup. But then when guys would cut, you'd see them picking up like man to man. They wouldn't actually pass off guys to somebody in a zone. But I know Eric's a strict man to man guy, but maybe they need to play some zone to cut off that penetration. But then, of course, zones can be vulnerable 3-point shooting too. So I don't know. They're just not a very good defensive team right now. And 14 games in, maybe that's who they are. But they're just and I thought they'd be better because they have pretty good length. Maybe Eric just has to tell guys, look, you go out there and you make defense a priority. Obviously, you got to score to win, but you make defense a priority. And if you don't, you're sitting next to me.
Vanderbilt made 10 of 25 3-point attempts last night. Scotty, teams right now against Arkansas have made 127 of 350 attempts this year. That's 36.3%.
Not great. That's about all I've got. Yeah, and Ken Palm has got him 288th in the country, shooting the 3, and then 294th defending it. It's just not great. And it seems like almost each game, maybe with the exception of the Mississippi State game, I think Mississippi State only hit maybe 4 or 5 threes. They kind of got a lot of stuff in transition, points off turnovers. But it seems like there's a guy or a couple guys who just shoot the ball really, really well from deep against Arkansas. And last night against Vanderbilt, it was Trey Thomas who was, if Chris Likes was off the floor, he was the smallest guy out there. I mean, I think he's like 5'11", $170, and he was a guy that JD Note, who's not the biggest guard in the world, he was kind of little manning him when Thomas was, kind of matched up with him defensively, and he ends up hitting 5 of 7 threes, and Eric Musselman said he's killed us. And he's absolutely right. You can't have that. Like, he is you look out there on the floor, and he looks the guy least likely to beat you. But I thought he was really a difference maker in the game with those 5 threes. And he hit a big one in the second half where JD Note had trouble getting through a stagger screen. I think Trey Thomas was moving from maybe the top of the key to the left wing, and Note got caught up in some screens, and Thomas knocked down an open three. He did what a lot of teams have done against Arkansas: get the open three and then they make them. Just not good. I'm not sure what exactly you do. Maybe you do go zone, but at the same time, a lot of coaches these days, when they try to attack a zone, they'll send a forward up to the top of the zone and set a ball screen. And Arkansas has not been good getting through ball screens. And then, maybe once you attack the screen, Arkansas is going to have to rotate properly. And I'm not sure Eric Musselman's really confident that his defense can do that right now.
JD Note, as Scotty mentioned, returned last night. He and Kamani Johnson and Chance Moore, who's only played 2 games this year, they were all available if the Razorbacks needed him. Johnson didn't score any points, but he did get into the game for about 8 minutes. Note finished with 16 points, but it was another night where he didn't shoot the ball real well. I mean, 6 of 17 overall. Those aren't terrible numbers. 1 of 7 from 3, though. He is now this year, he's 28 of 99 from 3-point range. That's 28.3%. And we actually had someone write in, one of our podcast listeners, Shane. He said Note gets a pass by so many in the media and coaches. It may just be perception, but he's only made 28 of 99 from beyond the arc this season. He shot 49 more 3-pointers than the next highest player on the team, yet he still consistently takes these shots. My question would be why? What do you guys think about the shot selection and JD Note and the number of shots that he takes within this offense?
Well, I think sometimes he takes some ill-advised shots, but I think other times other guys aren't stepping up. And, it's like Eric has said, he's one of the few guys on the team that can create his own shot. Likes can probably do that at times too. I remember the first game when they beat Mercer. I'm trying to remember how many shots JD took. It was a lot, like 26 or something. But I remember a couple of days later, we were talking to Eric, and he had a chance to review the film, and he said, well, if people want to say that JD was, hogging the ball or whatever, other guys, he was taking shots because other guys weren't doing anything, So I think you'd rather have JD taking shots than some of those other guys if it's jumpers. He had a good look at the end. I think you got it. I mean, the guy had, he hadn't played since in 2 weeks. And I guess he'd been practicing on a limited basis. He did have 5 assists. I think he had 5 boards. So he did some other things. Obviously, you'd like to see him shoot better. But I think some of that is just that, the shot clock's run down. Somebody's got to make a play, So I don't think it's all on him. I think he could take better shots at times. But also, I mean, who else do you want taking shots? Maybe now, maybe Stanley. Maybe you get the ball to Tony inside. But I don't think that's really all on JD. I think sometimes he just got to do it because nobody else is doing it.
I think JD is going to stay on the floor as long as he is, arguably Arkansas's best defender. Like JD, he had 5 steals last night against Vanderbilt. And I'm looking at his KenPom page. He ranks 32nd in the country with a steal percentage of 4.5%. So in 4.5% of Arkansas's defensive possessions, JD Note's taking the ball from somebody. Like, that's really good. And so he's not going to come off the floor if he's doing that. Eric Musselman and him kind of have this unique relationship where, last year they kind of decided, or Eric kind of decided, look, I'm going to forgive maybe some of these shots that I know that you're going to take because JD's a gunner. If he's nothing else, he's a gunner. But if you're going to do that, you're going to have to defend. And JD's defense has been great since probably about the midpoint last year. And you can just about count on every game that he's going to get a steal or two, high on the perimeter that leads to a run out. I will agree with Shane. JD's shot selection is shaky at best sometimes. And, I track a lot of the shots that these guys take. Like, I catalog their shots. So whether it's like, especially for 3-pointers, which it's really kind of interesting to track, catch and shoot threes from each area of the floor. So the corners, wings, top of the key, and then off the dribble threes. And his favorite three that he likes to take is that off the dribble three from the left wing. And he's bad at it, really bad at it. I think he started like 0 for 9, 0 for 9 or 0 for 11 this year. And I think he was at one point like 2 of 15 or something like that. He needs to weed that shot out. And maybe it just comes down to like Arkansas running sets to where he's just not over there. But at the same time, I don't feel like you can keep JD out of like operating in pick and roll with like, say, a Jalen or a Stanley, because JD's probably their best player getting to the rim too. And you don't want to take that part of his game away from him. It's tricky. It's just tricky, but I think Eric's going to, kind of keep letting JD do it, because he, if he sees a couple shots go down, like he can reel off 8 or 10 points, like before you know it. And again, he's a pretty good defender. So that's my take on it.
Note played 37 minutes against Vanderbilt, so there's obviously going to be more opportunities for shots. That was easily, or I say easily, it was the team high. Scotty, you mentioned he had 5 steals. He also had 5 assists, and I would assume he probably had more assistable
those
passes.
Potential assists, yeah.
The Basketball Podcast of Mid-America is brought to you by Landers Toyota of Northwest Arkansas. Visit them at their location on 411 South Metro Parkway in Rogers, or online at landerstoyotanwa.com.
For all your automotive needs, shop Landers Toyota NWA in Rogers, where we guarantee you the best buying experience and best service after the sale in Arkansas. Landers Toyota NWA in Rogers.
WholeHogSports.com has the largest, most experienced staff of reporters covering sports in Arkansas. Football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. You'll find it at WholeHogSports.com. The website includes up-to-minute news, daily commentaries, and award-winning photography from the staffs of Hogs Illustrated and the Democrat Gazette. For subscriptions, call 1-800-757-6277. That's 1-800-757-6277. Or visit us online today. WholeHogSports.com.
Want more coverage of your home team? Download the Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Check out the Fan Zone and get up-to-the-minute videos, podcasts, and features on football, basketball, baseball, recruiting, and more. Search for Whole Hog Sports on Apple TV, Roku, and Amazon Fire at home. And take it with you on the go by downloading it for your mobile device in your app store. The Whole Hog Sports Video on Demand app. Get it today.
Looking back at Arkansas's 75-74 loss to Vanderbilt on Tuesday night, now it's time for the ugly. I would have to think you start with the free throw shooting. If they have better free throw shooting against Vanderbilt, they're able to potentially win that game, certainly. And you hate to make too much of Chris Like's miss at the end, because he's been so good for them as a free throw shooter, but that was a big miss. That could have tied the game, potentially sent it to overtime. But Arkansas missed, 10 free throws, I think, against Vanderbilt last night? Yeah, 18 of 28. Not great free throw shooting. And if you're going to win a game, you're going to have to shoot free throws well, and you would expect that teams would shoot free throws better at home.
Yeah, it was kind of a shock. You feel like Likes is automatic. I think going into that game, if remember the note right in Arkansas's notes, he'd hit 31 of 31 in the last 3 minutes. And then, of course, he hit the first, so that's 32 of 32, and then he missed the second. But, I think most people would take 32 out of 33 in the last 3 minutes of a game. So it's hard. Even the best free throw. I mean, nobody shoots 100%, I don't think anybody's ever done that in a season, unless they were 2 of 2 or something. But, and then the crazy thing about that was he misses the free throw, and then the 5'7" guy gets his own miss, and then he gets it out to Jackson Robinson, their best perimeter shooter, for a wide open three. So you're sitting there thinking, as Robinson's, dialing up, you're thinking, well, man, that was a good miss. They're going to get a 3 out of this. It's going to be a 4-point possession. And then Robinson misses it. But yeah, I mean, it's good. They got to the line 28 times. I think one less than Vandy, and Vandy got two shots because Eric got a technical. And but yeah, 18 out of 28 and horrible. But if you're, in a close game, that's not good. And especially if you're not going to get a lot of knock down a lot of jumpers, you got to make them pay at the line. Arkansas has done that a lot this season. They've been a pretty good free throw shooting team. I think as a team, 73% or something like that. But yeah, if they shoot a better percentage, just a couple more is all they needed, So that was a big part of the game, and an ugly part, as you said.
I had a different perspective than you guys had of the free throw because I was watching on TV. You guys were in the media seating, back behind the free throw. It looked like the form on the second free throw was a lot different than what we've seen from him. And it was almost like he knew he was about to miss the shot and he followed it. And I don't know, it almost looked like he leaned into the shot more than he typically does.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's definitely something that we didn't pick up on, but I thought it was very curious. You just mentioned obviously he grabbed his own rebound, but how does he grab the rebound? Like he obviously, I think you're right. Like I think he knew that he was going to miss that free throw, and that's how he kind of got a head start on everybody else. Like the free throw shooter probably knows before anybody else if he feels like the shot's off. My ugly, I think, is just Arkansas's turnovers of late. Like I was looking at some KenPom numbers Tuesday night, and in every one of Arkansas's losses, they've had a turnover rate of at least 18.9%, which is, that's almost 1 out of every 5 possessions. And Arkansas plays at a really fast pace. They average 73 possessions a game. So you take 1 out of every 5 of those possessions. That's how many turnovers kind of Arkansas is committing in those losses. And in those 4 losses, opponents are averaging 21 points off turnovers. That is not ideal, and it's got to be driving Eric up the wall because a hallmark of his teams, especially at Nevada, and even his first team, I think at Arkansas, like they valued possession better than, or almost better than, anybody in the country. And to have a guy, like Stanley Moody was great. He had 4 turnovers, a couple offensive fouls, and a couple, passes that were, errant, missed the mark. And then Devo, I just feel like I don't know what the deal was, but it was like the ball was super slippery for him. It was just falling out of his hands every time he, tried to attack the rim. And that's why he didn't play but 9 minutes. Obviously in the first half, he had a couple fouls, but he turned the ball over again in the second half. His night was done. I just think those turnovers are that's one of the biggest things I think holding this team back. Is Eric, he would rather get a bad shot, obviously, than no shot, because Arkansas can, you can rebound your own misses, and Arkansas has been pretty good at doing that this year. So I think that's one of the biggest issues facing this team right now.
I don't know if it seemed real big at the time, because if Arkansas wasn't ahead, the game was real close. But Eric Musselman got a technical foul last night, and those free throws ended up being the decisive points in Vanderbilt winning the game. I thought it was kind of interesting that he's been teed up 3 times this year. He got 2 technicals and thrown out of the OU game over in Tulsa. Owen Short, who was one of the officials last night, he was on the floor for both of those games. But it's kind of funny, he's not the one who teed him up in any of those occasions. Last night it was Steven Anderson who assessed him the technical foul over in Tulsa. It was Jerry Pollard who did it. But that technical foul, I think if you ask Eric Musselman, maybe in retrospect, he'd like to have that one back.
Yeah, the technicals in Tulsa really didn't hurt him, because at that point I think OU was up by 13 or 14 with 3 minutes left, and it was pretty clear OU was going to win that game. And I don't know if Eric was trying to get tossed or if he was just that upset or wanted to light a fire under his team or what. But those, last night you get a technical in a 1-point game, midway through the second half or whenever it was. That's not good. I mean, there were so many things Arkansas could have done to win that game, or mistakes they made. And yeah, I'm sure Eric would love to have that back. And the thing is, you never really know exactly why a coach got a technical unless he just flat out tells you, which Eric usually does, and most don't, because they don't want to get fined. But you don't know if he'd been riding the official, and the official, said something like, "Hey, that's enough," and then he wrote him again, and that's okay. Or did the official just have a short fuse, and here's something he didn't like? I mean, I like to think officials shouldn't have rabbit ears. I mean, the people aren't there to watch them. They're there to watch the teams. But also, if you're calling the game, it's tough to call because the players are bigger and faster and quicker than ever. It's a very tough game to officiate. I did think for both sides it was a pretty quick whistle, a lot of ticky tack fouls, maybe. And I don't think that favored one team or the other. I think it's just it kind of messed up the flow of the game. And Pippen, I don't know, it's like if they breathed on Pippen, he seemed to get to the free throw line, but then Pippen fouled out. So anybody that says, oh, they were, because he's Scottie Pippen's kid, Scottie Pippen was there. I saw some fans on Twitter. I don't know, it was one of the officials, I'm not sure which one, maybe Pat Adams, was interacting with Scottie Pippen Sr., who was sitting there right at midcourt. So I just think, I don't know if that it was a really well officiated game either way, but you got to try to control your temper in that situation.
Looking ahead to this weekend, Arkansas will play at Texas A&M on Saturday. It's going to be a noon tip-off. The game's going to be televised on SEC Network. A&M kind of quietly is putting together a good season. Now, they haven't played a very strong schedule, but they're 12-2. They've won 5 in a row, and they have not lost at Reed Arena this year. They're 8-0 at home. Now, you look at the games they played at home. These aren't very good teams. They played North Florida, Abilene Christian, okay. Houston Baptist, that's New Orleans, UCA, not a very strong home schedule to this point. They beat Georgia on Tuesday night. Marcus Williams hit a three-pointer with, I think, about 0.9 seconds left to win a game down at Athens, 81-79. Georgia had scored just before that to take the lead, and then A&M ends up winning that game. I believe that was A&M's SEC opener. Scotty, what do you expect on Saturday when Arkansas goes down to A&M? Because like we mentioned last week, Arkansas is in this stretch of games where these are the real winnable games for them. I know they go to LSU next weekend, but other than that, the month of January has got a lot of winnable games, or it would appear like it has some winnable games in the SEC. And if you're going to win a road game, I would think A&M is one of the places that you would think you could do that.
Yeah, Reed Arena is just weird, man. Like it to me, there's like a handful of places in this league that you go there and I feel like the opposing team almost gets kind of like Space Jam. They got all the players got their talents taken from them. Like all of the opposing team's energy gets sucked out of them just because there's no like real life or environment in the place. Texas A&M's one of those. Ole Miss used to be like that, can kind of still be like that. Mississippi State definitely is. I really felt that, especially with a 4:00 tip off last week. Reed Arena is it's a difficult kind of place to play, but for reasons opposite of like why Arkansas has been a tough place to play. Texas A&M's playing pretty well right now. They've won 5 straight. They just won at Georgia. No, Georgia's not a really good team. I think they may be the lowest rated team in the SEC according to Ken Palm's ratings, but winning on the SEC is not easy no matter where you're playing. It's going to be interesting to see Ethan Henderson and if he's evolved at all as a player. I'm not honestly sure how much he's been playing for them this season. I think he's playing, quite a bit more than he was at Arkansas. But I think if Arkansas can get decent performances from Stanley Amude again, Audice Toney again, I think those are 2 guys that they really need to consistently play well because they're so efficient, effective around the rim. They just need more rebounding from those 2 guys. I think they only had 6 between them, and both guys played north of 33 minutes against Vanderbilt. But just want to kind of see guys who have, I guess, kind of started to play well again, continue that. And then maybe, you just get Devo going and maybe JD gets his legs back. And it's potentially a game that could, maybe be the start of a turnaround for Arkansas, but we'll have to see, obviously, and they'll have to defend too.
Scotty mentioned Ethan Henderson, Bob. It's Jackson Robinson's going back to A&M. He was Arkansas's kid in that trade.
Yeah, maybe they should just have Jackson and Ethan play one-on-one and, winner takes all. Yeah, I've been curious, I haven't looked at every box score, but I think Ethan started last night, played about 16, 17 minutes, had like 2 points, 2 rebounds. So But he seems to be getting, more consistent minutes there. I think he started several games. Sometimes you look at a lineup and you say, wow, that guy's averaging 2 points, two rebounds. Why is he starting? But maybe, the coach likes how he sets picks or just how he shares the ball, or just we know Ethan brings a lot of energy and enthusiasm from his time here. So, but you wonder how Jackson Robinson will react. He really didn't get to play much. I think he had COVID was a huge issue for everybody, but it was a really big issue for the Aggies. They seemed like they didn't play for a month or something. I know, talking to Jackson when he committed to Arkansas, he'd had some COVID issues, really didn't get to do much there. And, he's getting much more of a chance at Arkansas. You think he'd be fired up to go back there? I'm sure Ethan will be fired up to play his old team, although there aren't many of these guys. He's going to, Devo and Jalen, I guess, and Connor. But he didn't know these new guys. But yeah, A&M. It was a weird game last night at Georgia. A&M had a 17-point lead, and they blew it. And Georgia went ahead. And usually on the road, when you blow a big lead, you're not going to win it. Georgia, I think, scored on a drive with about 6 or 7 seconds left to go ahead, and then, like you said, it's weird. They basically hit a three at the exact point of the game that Arkansas, had a shot to win, and theirs went down and Arkansas's didn't. And Georgia on paper is probably the worst team in the league, but like Scotty said, there's no easy road wins in the SEC. But A&M, I think, has got to be feeling pretty good about themselves. It's Buzz Williams' third year there. We know he's a quality coach. He's got his players now had a mass exodus. I mean, they lost 7 or 8 guys, I think. Now, some of those guys Buzz probably wanted to get rid of, some he didn't. But, on paper, I'm assuming A&M will be favored. But if you're looking at other road trips, for Arkansas, you think, well, this is one of the more winnable games, and they lost home to Vandy. So if they're going to have a solid season, they got to get some back on the road, and this would be a logical place to do it if they can pull it off.
It'll be Arkansas's first game at A&M in 2 years. The game down there last year got canceled because of all the COVID problems the Aggies were having. Speaking of COVID problems, Missouri, they had their game against Mississippi State on Wednesday night postponed due to COVID issues there. As of now, they're scheduled to play at Alabama on Saturday. That's relevant, though, because after that, they come to Arkansas next week. And so that's something that definitely bears watching. We appreciate you joining us on this week's basketball podcast of Mid-America. Hope you'll check out the Whole Hog Football Podcast. You can find it by going to Apple or Spotify and searching for Whole Hog Radio. That's WHOLEHOGRADIO, Whole Hog Radio. Clay Henry, Scotty, and I take a look back at the Razorbacks' 24-10 win over Penn State. Hope you'll give us a review. It'll help others find our podcast. We'll be back with another basketball podcast of Mid-America next week. For Bob Holt and Scotty Bordelon, I'm Matt Jones. Thanks for joining us.
The proceeding has been a production of WholeHogSports.com. Look for our latest podcast on iTunes, Spotify, or your favorite podcast store. And visit us anytime at WholeHogSports.com for the latest news and commentary.